Right. Said we should have music, just like when the news kicks on.
I'll put something together for you if you want.
Yes.
You're up.
Tell what time.
Okay, welcome to the January 15th, 2020 meeting of the Kennebunkport Planning Board. First off, attendance. John Harcourt is not here, but everyone else is, so you still don't get to vote, George.
Glad I showed up.
Sorry, I'm glad you showed up anyway. Anyhow, okay, the first item is item 191-101, 5 Greer Road Trust, Walsh Engineering. Now, the agenda here says finding of facts. It's more than that because we continued the public hearing to today. And I don't know, if you have anything new to present, Mr. Walsh, before we...
The only thing I have is what I submitted to the board, I think on the December 30th, which was really clarification items on
Yes.
on the deeds and the agent authorization.
Right, and then there's a PBR you just gave us?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
good,
I
thank
think
you.
that was it.
Really good.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well,
We doing to the minutes?
is there-
Do we want to approve?
we have to, let me ask if the board has any questions on this application before we see if there's any public. Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing for this item. If there's anyone wishes to discuss the 5 Greer Road Trust. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And any final comments from us guys? I
Nope.
guess not. Seeing none, would you like to make a motion here, Mr.?
So I'd like to move that we're going to
Approve it,
approve the
yes.
application.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so you have the finding of facts right there, and we have a handy dandy notary in the audience, so
So shall I just read them now?
please do, yes.
Okay. So this is findings of fact for the application of the authorized agent, Walsh Engineering, for the property at 5 Greer Road. And the finding of facts are as follows. Following the site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on the 4th of December 2019 and a public hearing held on 18th of December 2019 and continued on the 15th of January 2020, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions and renders the following decisions subject to the conditions enumerated below. Findings of fact, the owner is 5 Greer Road Trust, which is Julia Mayer and Celeste Meyer joint tenant trustees, with a current mailing address of 2444 Broadway, San Francisco, California, 94115. In a letter dated 4th of November 2019, Celeste Mayer authorized Walsh Engineering Associates, Inc. to act as the agent for this matter. In a letter dated 28th of December 2019, Julia Mayer has authorized Walsh Engineering Associates, Inc. to act as the agent in this matter. The property has a street address of 5 Greer Road, Kennebunkport, Maine, 04046. The property is located in Cape Porpoise West Resource Protection and Shoreland Zones. The house is located in the A2 flood zone as shown on the currently effective flood insurance map, that's FIRM for short, with an elevation of 9.3 feet. The first floor of the house is located at elevation 10.5 feet. The preliminary firms from FEMA dated April 14th, 2017. The house is located in the VF flood zone with the base flood elevation of 12 feet. The property consists of a single residential lot as shown on Tax Assessor's Map 29, Block 1, Lot 17. The owner has demonstrated a legal interest in the property by providing warranty deeds recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds as follows. Book 14413, pages 529, 532, 534, 537, 540, 543, 546, 549. Book 15667, page 674, and Book 16650, pages 908 through 913, and pages 914 through 919. The lot is legally nonconforming and includes a single-family residence. The lot is about 0.2 acres, which is about 8,879 square feet. In an original application dated November 6, 2019, the applicant proposes to expand a portion of the existing house within the existing structure footprint. The original application has been supplemented with additional submissions dated December 13, 2019, December 18, 2019, and December 30, 2019. Applicant proposes to expand the residence into an area currently occupied by externally accessed storage rooms located on the northeast side of the house. The storage rooms are connected to the existing house, are included in the current house structural footprint. The attached storage room comprises a volume of 392 cubic feet. The expansion will comprise a volume of 1,105 cubic feet for a volume increase of 713 cubic feet, which is 4.3% of the existing 16,556 cubic feet volume of the house. The proposed expansion would not increase the floor area of the house beyond the limits of the existing structure. The proposed expansion is significantly less than 30% maximum expansion limit specified in the shoreland zoning provisions of the Kennebunkport zoning ordinance. Excuse me. Applicant also proposes to modify existing stairs to the porch located on the southwest side of the house. Modification of ocean side only access will provide access from both driveway and ocean sides. Proposed expansion will not introduce additional impervious area. Erosion and sedimentation control shall conform to the plan included in the application. A Section 2 permit by rule, PBR, application dated December 13th, 2019, has been approved by the Maine DEP for the proposed activity within the 75-foot setback from the highest astronomical tide. Guideline for decisions. Pursuant to the requirements of Article 10.10.a of the Land Use Ordinance, guidelines for decisions, the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling on one or more of the following identified findings which would otherwise compel denial. The proposed use meets the definition or specific requirements set forth in the Land Use Ordinance and will be in compliance with applicable state or federal laws, finding yes. The proposed use will not create fire safety hazards and will provide adequate access to the site or to the buildings on the site for immersive vehicles, finding yes. The proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets and is adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site and will not damage the value and diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Finding not applicable. The provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of the development. Finding not applicable. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, glare, or other cause. Finding yes. The provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazard to safety. Finding not applicable. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the value of adjacent properties, nor have a significant detrimental effect which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding yes. The design of the site will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage as in conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for the prevention of ground or surface water contamination. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made to control erosion or sedimentation. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on the site. Finding yes. The proposed water supply will meet the demands of the proposed use or for fire protection purposes. Finding not applicable. Adequate provision has been made for the transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by the state law. Finding not applicable. The proposed use will not have an adverse impact on significant scenic vistas or on significant wildlife habitat, nor will have such an impact that could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding yes. The proposed use will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. Finding not applicable. Existing off-site ways and traffic facilities can safely and conveniently accommodate the increased traffic generated by the development as far away from the development as the effects of the development can be traced with reasonable accuracy, finding not applicable. Then, when a proposed development will be located within the shoreland or resource protection, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use, Article 10, the townwide regulations, Article 6, the performance standard for specific activities and land use in Article 7, approval of the development also require that the board makes positive findings based on information presented that the proposed use will maintain safe and healthful conditions, finding yes, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters, finding yes, will adequately propose for the disposal of all wastewater, finding not applicable, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat, finding yes, will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters, finding not applicable, will protect archaeological and historical resources as designated in the comprehensive plan, finding not applicable, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use, finding yes, is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in section 5.6 of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, finding yes. So any negative finding by the board means the application has been denied. The application is otherwise complete. Conclusions, Article 10.10.a of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified finding that would otherwise compel denial as noted above. The board makes no such findings. Decision, the site plan application identified above is approved. Conditions on approval pursuant to Article 10.1 and 10.12E. First, the applicant pursuant to 10.12.E shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. Note, assignment or transfer of rights to construct an approved project is valid without prior review and approval by the planning board or a new performance guarantee to ensure that any assignee or transferee has the financial capacity to undertake the complete project. The applicant must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the form of a copy thereof attested by the Register of Deeds before any permits may issue or before any construction activity may commence. A flood hazard development permit must be obtained from the town of Kennebunkport before any additional permits may be issued. Dated 15th of January 2020. I think that's it.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the findings of fact
as read.
as read.
I'll second it.
Okay, in favor? Okay. Good. Approved. Let's get it signed.
All right. I'll be passing this around. Thank you.
I guess while it's signing, if you folks want to get started on the next item, we have item 191201, Lord and Harrington Sebago Techniques Authorized Agent, a site plan review public hearing for approval of the 6-foot wide porch along south side of a main structure to replace two small porches. Is that really the limitation, or is there also a doing a new building?
All right.
Oh, they were replacing two buildings.
Would you ask him?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve Doe from Sebago Technics. Also with me tonight is Ralph Austin and Kevin Lord.
Thank you.
So the plan is to remove these two decks and add a new deck. Talking with Kevin Lord, they'd actually like to put a roof on it as well. There's a lot of water coming off the roof and it's, hitting the decks, and they'd like to, put a roof so that water is shed a little further out. There won't be any increase in the coverage for that. As far as my understanding, as far as what the planning board is to review is the deck or the porch addition to the building. The other elements of the site is being reviewed by the code office, so the two structures that are being replaced, that's a code office approval on that. The reason that you're looking at this is because this is a non-conforming, or it's a conditional use, is what it is. So that's why it comes to the board for review.
Change of more than 100 square feet
Yes,
in a non-conforming use.
yes.
Well, in a conditional use. Yeah.
You got me, say.
Conditional use.
Conditional use, beg your pardon.
I'd still like to ask a couple of questions that are outside the purview of the porch there. Just because we've received a letter, one.
I saw
and
that.
I'm sort of curious, because it's a non-conforming building. And first question is, I'm still confused. You have 9 units in the big building.
Correct.
And then you're replacing 2 cottages. and
Yes.
The plan looks fine. Are these going to be year-round rentals? They're not short-term rentals, right?
No, I don't, no.
They can't be short-term rentals. Are they going to? Oh, they're being sold as condos then?
So they're
Okay.
full seasonal then?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
They might
It
rent
has
them out.
sewer and water
The
to it.
owners might rent them,
Well, the owner might,
rent them.
the owners might rent them
Sure.
out. No,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of long-term rental versus short-term rentals that we have a definition for.
Well, we have we have that defined as far as the renting of individual rooms within a dwelling unit.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
and so if that were, if that were the case, if there were to be rental of individual rooms in one of these units, that would have to go through a process through the zoning board of appeals.
That's 7.14.
Right, as far as the short-term rental of, of one of the dwelling units here, the town doesn't currently regulate, based on the amount of time, the renting of a unit in its entirety as a short-term rental. There's no restriction currently on this that regulates this property in that fashion as well.
So the owner could rent it out short-term, basically.
Yeah, unless the the condominium documents, speak directly to that. I don't recall the specifics
Yeah,
of
that was
that,
my
but-
other
They
question.
usually do.
Are there going to be
Yeah, I think Ralph
condominium
can, I
documents?
think Ralph can address that.
For the record, Ralph Austin, representing Lord and Harrington LLC. It will be established as a condominium, so the units will be sold by the developer. The condominium document currently has a 2-week minimum rental, but may be reducing that to 1 week, but it will not be less than 1 week allowed per the condominium documents.
Are you speaking of the condos inside the current multiplex or the 2 single-family dwellings?
This would be the
I'm
same.
sure, all of them are condominium
all be
units,
equally-
but I'm not sure if, on the restrictions, because it's been a while since I drafted
Yeah, yeah.
them. I don't recall if there's a difference between the units in the building and the 2 cottages. Typically, they'd be the same, but there may be some differences.
Understood.
Okay.
But they're all going to be individually owned
Correct, correct.
units,
Correct.
let's say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. The other questions I have are, that there was some concern in this letter about lighting and also about drainage, because Susan Bassett's property is much lower than the property that you're going to modify.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the parking area, it's nicely designed with parking spaces, but you've got seashell, a few inches of seashell, but then you've got a coarse gravel
Right.
underneath for about 10 inches.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, compared to what you have today, which seems to be just gravel over soil, is that going to affect the drainage? Is there going to be more drainage onto her property?
It shouldn't, because we're actually less coverage on the impervious areas, or the gravels. We're actually adding more, right now, this whole back area is just one big gravel area, and it just all just runs off. Everything heads into this direction, and then it travels
Toward the stream?
towards the stream, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where everything goes, that's where it always has gone, we're not changing that. But we are adding more, I would say, green areas, to kind of,
And will there be a barrier between her property and for headlight glare and things like that?
there is a wooded area, we're saving the trees on the, I don't know if you've been out there, but essentially from this line here to there, it drops right off. And that's, there's basically a wooded ravine, area back in there. We're not proposing to add any plants in there. We haven't really developed a landscape planting plan in the back here.
Where is the Bassett property?
I honestly don't know.
It's
right to the back
it's
side.
right at the west end there. Yep, right there.
Susan Bassey, yeah, she's right up, she's at the back there.
Could you point to it again? Thank you.
That, so she would own, over there.
The thing is that her property is much lower
Understood.
than this
Yeah, I don't know
property,
where her
so
house is.
things
I
could
was gonna
drain.
say, her property does abut this, but I don't believe her house is located right there. I mean.
No,
she
it's
has a-
located
it's
a little
quite
further
ways
out.
away, yeah.
Yeah,
She expressed a concern that whatever happened to her neighbors didn't happen to her. She's got apparently in view, an area that due to some other development, now is in her mind, a mosquito magnet, a swampy area, and she doesn't want to become
Oh,
a settling point for
Right.
runoff.
Yeah.
Apparently, it isn't today,
right.
and, as per normal, your construction plans would consider that, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
I mean, one of the things you could do, because that's coarse gravel, is put in a drain pipe that really takes the water toward the stream and away from her property, if you're putting in gravel there.
We're kind of keeping the same grade, but the water's still all going off that corner of the lot. And then there is, like I said, there is a swale that's right in here, and it all gathers in there. I haven't seen any, like standing water down in there that, we're not going to impact it any more than what's happening today. We're not creating a pool of water or damming anything down there. It's, I don't see that condition changing that's down there today.
Okay. As long as you're aware of it.
Yeah, we're aware of it,
Could you remind us, Steve, once again, of which current structures are coming down and where the new ones precisely are going to be
Sure.
located?
So there's an existing cottage back here, that's gonna be coming down. It's actually within a couple feet to the property line. And then there's another cottage, a house that sits right in here, and that one's coming down. So the new one, we're putting a new one up here by the road,
All right.
and then another one a little further back than where the other existing one. There was,
So that might be the one that would, be of concern to the abutter.
as far as,
It's closest.
As far
It's
as
close-
changing
closer.
the flow of water and the fact that it's closer to their
And light.
property.
yeah, there was as far as light, I would say, yeah.
No, I'm just staying with the water flow for the minute.
I don't think that house is gonna change it, because again, there was Kevin, correct me, I believe there was a barn or a. Still there. There is a building there. There was also a canvas tent that was there for many years.
I was just thinking that the parking area is large,
Yes.
and they're taking it from soil, which of course can hold a lot of water, to about 10
It's-
inches or more.
well, it is gravel
loose
out there.
gravel, which doesn't hold water.
It's gravel
It's gravel
now.
now.
Oh,
it's all gravel.
All down there,
Yeah.
10 inches deep?
The
It goes to
parking.
ledge. There's
Yeah,
ledge out there.
Shallow to bedrock.
Shallow to
Oh.
bedrock.
That
So
site
you're
out
gonna
there.
get
So it's not gonna change
it's
that?
not gonna
gonna
change
change
any,
it.
no.
Okay.
It's
And
not like
again,
you
the
have a lot of-
the author of the letter isn't here, but we're just trying to, I think,
Yeah,
address those
Exactly.
concerns. We're
No,
not
I-
saying that you're not,
right.
I don't
just
see
so
us
that she has her
impacting it.
hearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other concern she has is about lighting.
Yes.
And I have to agree with her, having things lit up like a space station and so forth
Yeah.
it's not good for that area, which is,
Yeah.
coastal shoreline type of area.
No, I understand. It's a
so-
neighborhood, and we're not looking to put pole lights out there. It's really just whatever lights on the building,
Uh-huh.
So like this house, the front porch would have a light, like any residence would. We're not lighting the parking lot. It's not lit today, we're not lighting it, in the future, so.
Okay.
Again, we want to keep it like a residential area as well.
Okay. Well, those were my questions.
How does it work for the condo owner? someone buys that condo and they decide a year later that they want to put one of those big old floodlights on it. You know what I mean? One of them big old floodlights.
No, they can't. One thing, the town has a lighting ordinance.
Okay,
Plus the condo association rules, I'm sure you're gonna.
Yeah.
Ralph's about to tell me about it.
Well, it's just that you wouldn't be able to do that without permission from the board of directors. And again, one, it would have to be in
Okay.
conformance with the zoning, but two, it's most likely that the board would not approve anything that would not be in keeping with the residential
Okay,
character.
good. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Steve, I had a few questions I volunteered to be the case manager for this, and so I read things a little more carefully over the last few days. If you could help me out with
Sure.
those. I want to just clarify what the existing nonconformances are of the property, and if I understand it right, one is that there's a multiplex that has 9 units in it rather than 8.
Correct.
Right, specifically. And you mentioned that there is a setback, is it of the multiplex that is not met, the 25-foot along the
It's-
top
it's-
side there?
It's 50 feet here. I believe it's 50 feet. 40, actually, I'll look at, yeah. Side yards are 50 for multiplex,
I see.
which is the blue line.
And what do you have to, what was it? Like,
I'm gonna say the closest point, which is right here. This is the current 20 foot, so it's probably 23, 24 feet existing.
it's supposed to be 50, and it's going to be 50 when you're finished, or it's going to remain?
Oh, the porches themselves?
Yeah, they're within the building.
Yeah, they're beyond the 50.
You're not changing that nonconformance?
No.
It's going to be retained? All right.
Exactly.
It won't be less nonconforming?
Correct.
It just won't be more nonconforming?
Correct.
And you're saying it's approximately 25?
The existing building, I would say 23.
All right, thank you, thank you.
And the new cottages are not multiplex, so they don't have that 50-foot requirement, correct?
They have a 15-foot,
They have a
and
15.
they'll meet that,
Okay.
Yes.
I assume, yeah, okay. The other one is the density, how many square feet on the property you need to have for a multiplex, or if it's a single-family dwelling, right? So a multiplex would require 60,000 square feet, is that
Yes.
correct? And a single-family dwelling would be 20?
Correct.
Correct.
Right. So if these were by themselves, each one of them, you would need 100,000 square feet in order to meet the current code.
I don't know if that's correct or not.
So yeah, so
60.
if
60
you were
plus
to,
two 20s, yeah.
I mean, that's,
think
so one of
it's
the
60.
nonconformities is the number of units, you know, as you've picked up in
Oh.
terms of the density. So you have,
Well, there's three structures.
that's right, you have, or if you want to call it, 3 uses, you know, that are on the
Fair enough,
lot. You know,
yep.
2 single-family uses and then the multiplex use. And so, you know, that's one of the nonconformities is the multitude of uses without meeting the minimum lot size per use.
Right.
That's one of the legally non-conforming situations of this property.
So you're saying one of those uses would be, a single family, you would be able to have one of them if you were doing this from scratch on that property?
Well, the area of parcels looks like.
Oh, maybe you could have 2 of them.
52,000, right.
Yeah, so you could do
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah, so if this was a vacant lot, this would have been a potentially subdividable lot for 2 single families.
Right. If the lot was 100,000 square feet, you could accommodate 3,
Right.
a multiplex
multitude of
and 2 singles.
Uses.
Yeah.
So I was simplifying it in my mind to say, you got about 100,000 square feet required, and you've got somewhere in the order of 51
52,
or 52.
52, 55.
52055. So 52055 is the right number?
Yes.
In the application page, you may note that you've got 1.18 acres, which I think corresponds to the pre-driveway acquisition number.
That could be.
If you concur on that, I'll just say that in the findings, that,
Anybody got a calculator?
yeah, 1.18 is 51,400.
Okay.
And
I
then
concur.
1.95, which is the number that you show on your site plan sheets,
Oh, okay,
is 1.95.
okay.
So that's all consistent with the exception of the application page. I told you I tried to read the details. Larry has been coaching me. All right. I want to clarify consistent with that anomaly, I wanted to clarify the addition that second deed brought to the table, right? In the cover letter, you say it added 655 square feet, and in the deed, it says that it's 526 square feet. What do you think's going on there?
That, we based it on the actual area. So I'm not sure why the you say it was 550 in the?
526 is the number that they reference in the deed. I just bring that to your attention, I think.
Okay.
I'm going to say that you provided the information based on the survey,
Yeah,
and that it's, because it uses the legalese, right, of 526 plus or minus, or
Yeah.
thereabouts, but.
Yeah.
But it's a significant difference. Make sure you own it.
yes.
Heads up. And I think you just spoke to this other clarification of in the cover letter. You talked about a slight reduction in impervious surfaces of the new parking layout.
Yes.
Can you help me understand that a little bit? You're going to have less parking area? Is that what you're
Less
saying?
impervious than what's there today. But when you look at, as far as impervious not counting building,
Yeah.
but as far as parking, walkways, there's gonna be less in this plan than what's there today.
All right. Lot coverage is up because of the structures.
Yes.
But part of that also resulted in a reduction in the impervious
Correct.
surface that's not structure.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I was looking for, and there may be one, but I couldn't find it, a table. I wanted to construct a table that said, I started, my impervious, my lot coverage started with this many square feet out of this many square feet, 13.3%. And then I added these 3 decks, and they were this big. And so now I have this number. Is that there in that simple?
We have a.
You've given them to us in the past,
We
and so now
did,
you've trained me to look for them.
Yeah, over here, we have on the plan, note 11, we list what the existing coverages are. So we got structures, including overhangs, decks, porches, and terraces.
Where are you, on that last sheet in the packet?
Sheet
Uh,
3.
Yes, 3 and note number 11.
All right, come on, let me get with you. Note 11. 69 proposed. Okay. All right, that's what I was looking for. Just say one more thing, though, about, back to the increases are due to 3 components? Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I would say it's the porch to the building,
That's the biggest one, right? It's a 6-foot wide porch along the length?
length of that. But then we've also, these 2 units here are
Yes.
bigger than what the existing cottages are.
And do you have something that says what those three, how those three add up to?
We totaled it, we don't have them broken out individually. You know, we list, the total of what was there before.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
building, the two, is the 69. But I don't have it broken out. I don't have some that says cottage A was this, square
All
footage,
right.
cottage B was that. We can provide that, but I
I'll
don't
live
have that on.
with, I'll live with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing it.
No.
It's not critical, it was just of interest, that's all. Can I ask you about apparent typos on
Oh,
sheet 1 of 1? The last sheet in my plan
okay.
is called sheet 1 of 1. And in it, it says, for the record, talks about multifamily, single-family, multifamily, and multiplex. Min lot size, min street frontage, and I think there's some corrections.
What sheet was this again?
It's the last sheet of my package, but it's called sheet 1 of 1.
The
Oh.
existing construction.
Gotcha, existing conditions. Yeah.
Look at note 3. And, you there?
Yep.
Multifamily is, in fact, in our code, a two-family, right? Just to be clear.
That should be two-family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine, except under minimum street frontage, I don't think you need 1,000 square foot, 1,000
No,
foot.
we don't.
I think you only need 100.
100.
And I think for a multiplex, you need 60,000
Yep.
lot size and not 10,000.
Yep.
All right, so those are just, I think, just typos,
They are. Well, yep.
so. I did not read every sheet with that. I
It's
only,
on this
because I
one.
would,
It's on this.
I was only looking for that previous table that that you
Yeah.
that finally showed me, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's what I found. Now, Nina did a good job of going over most of the issues that Ms. Bassett raised in her letter. I wanted to ask specifically about parking.
Okay.
How many parking spaces are there?
We have 22.
All right.
We're
So you
required-
have two-bedroom units, is that correct?
Yes.
So there's 2 parking spaces for each, which is 18, and then 2 for each of the single-family homes, which is 22 total.
Do you have any one-bedrooms in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So we actually have some extra.
We have we have 2 extras.
There's 2 one-bedroom.
That's right.
All right.
So note number 12 has a parking summary on it, which talks about the 2-bedroom units, the 1-bedroom units,
Note
that we're
tw- note-
required to.
Note 12, did you say?
Note 12.
Note 12.
There's 9 2-bedroom units
Got it.
and 2 1-bedroom units
Yeah.
for a total of 20 spaces.
All right.
And we're providing 22.
That's helpful. I think that's all I had. I did want to say that the letter from the abutter raised a number of issues that were outside of the purview of the planning board, and I know that she's been up to the code enforcement office, and I would imagine that the people she spoke with there would tell her what was within our purview and what wasn't. So I won't belabor that, only to say that there were concerns about everything from affordable housing to just the number of people that are in the area during the season. So those are concerns, but they're not under our purview. I thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, well, I guess, hearing no questions from us, we could open the public hearing if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this particular application? I have a feeling that Mrs. Bassett or Susan Bassett provided her comments that she would have come in here and provided.
Right.
And I think we've taken care of them to the
Well,
greatest
hopefully
extent we
we've
can.
addressed them.
I mean,
It wouldn't hurt to meet with her to address them. I mean, you could probably put her mind at ease that she's not going to have a mosquito factory on her
Yeah.
property.
No more than currently exist.
Right.
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 But you might consider the plantings along that line, and it's just one more way to take up drainage and help keep down the mosquito population.
Okay.
I
Well,
would make a motion that this be approved.
I'll second that.
okay, in favor?
Do you need to close the public hearing, or did you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Yes,
right.
we have, thank you.
Never
Okay,
mind
I'm
then.
going to.
We'll have to
there
go
being
another week.
No comments other than the letter, and we've dealt with the letter. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Nice.
Now I'm going to take the vote that you just
I would
moved.
move that this is complete. Larry seconded it, or Scott
Someone
seconded
did,
it.
I don't know.
Okay.
All in
anyway,
favor?
Okay, approved. Yeah.
Approving it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
and
Yeah,
you'll
thanks.
have an FOF.
We'll have
for-
this by the next meeting.
For February 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the real fun here. What we're calling a sketch plan, even though officially this isn't a subdivision, so it isn't exactly a sketch plan, but it's to get this out in front of the board so that you guys, before you prepare your first normal stuff for approval, you can get our inputs.
Yeah, so I don't mind giving just, a little bit of background that, when the colony brought forward the concept of this, pretty significant redevelopment plan, we just felt that it was good, it was a good thought and a good idea to bring the concept in front of the planning board before they, invested significant effort into the development of the plan. Just to have a non-binding conversation, but a good conversation about, the idea of the project and, to give them some guidance, as they move forward with, with this property. So I know, there'll be we're gonna use the screen, I think, for some of the presentation that's behind you, but I think it'll also be up on the TV, so.
Wow, fancy.
Can you put it up on that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name is John Martin. I'm representing the Colony Hotel. I wanted to thank you guys for giving us a little bit of your time and going over the sort of the preliminary plan here. I'm going to talk briefly a little bit about the history of the colony, for those of you who aren't super familiar with it, how we kind of ended up with this in front of you, and also how I hooked up with Elliot, so it makes a little bit more sense to everybody. So I am managing partner of the Colony Hotel. The Colony is an interesting property. A lot of you may not know that it's only been owned by two families in its entire existence. It was built in 1913-14. It was owned originally by the Norton family, and then bought by the Boughton and Banta family in 1948. I'm lucky enough to be the third generation to be actively involved with owning and operating the Colony Hotel in Kennebunkport. Relative to a hotel, the Colony has gone under, or had very few renovations, with the exception of the north wing, and you have your page right in front of you, which is the building on the left-hand side. Originally, the hotel was built without that. That big addition was put in 1917. But for the most part, the Colony has undergone, with the exception of acquiring neighboring properties, very little renovation. I got involved in the Colony, or pulled back in, I should say, about 13 years ago. And I had noticed that the building was starting to fall a little bit into disrepair. So we started a fairly aggressive renovation project with the Colony. We've been putting about $1 million in it every year for the past 11 years. Some of the projects you guys know about, because I've been here before. We talked about, we converted the pool covered area where some people go and dine, was a tent before, now it's permanent. We changed the kitchen to a permanent kitchen. We did the lobby over, we did the grand dining room, the porch dining room. I was here for the board to do the outdoor porch area, which was really kind of an interesting project because we ended up running into a bunch of sill problems and structural problems. Got to shore it up with some steel, which is great. Then we did the front of the building. Some of you saw that happen because it's right there on Colony Ave. Again, ran into some more structural problems, did some steel, so we feel a little better about the building. During all these renovations, it's interesting to note that the Colony also changed in the way that we operated. For those of you who've been in town for a long time, you probably know that the Colony used to be sort of a destination resort. People would check in. It was American plan. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's kind of like being on a cruise ship. You would eat your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner at the Colony. You probably wouldn't go into town very much. You might stay for a month, maybe 6 weeks. And during my tenure there, in the last 13, 14 years, we've really been evolving and trying to open the Colony up to the public more and more. Trying to do, with that new dining room down by the pool, make a casual dining option for people to come out and enjoy the hotel. We have live entertainment a couple nights. This is my gratuitous plug for the hotel on TV, right? But get people out to sort of watch the sunset. We had about 2,000 people on property, mainly locals for the 4th of July last year. So we're really trying to overcome the burden of sometimes these big hotels of being this big, scary, exclusive thing up on the hill that no one ever wants to go to, and trying to sort of bring the community into the hotel. And we're doing a lot more events than we did in the past too. So we're really feeling like we're being a little more a part of the community and getting more people involved with coming out and dining. We have pool members. It's evolving, I should say, just like the hotel's evolving. But back to the East House. So the East House is the kind of the catalyst. And on your map, that is, if anyone knows the property, it is going to be on the sort of northwest side of the campus. And Elliot is definitely going to go over this with way better detail. He's going to go through the pamphlet with you. But the East House about 13 years ago, if you're driving on Colony Ave, by the way, it's on the left-hand side as you're driving by the Colony. It's that kind of motel. We used to call it the motel when I was a kid. But the motel there, Motor Lodge, which is now called the East House.
Oh, sorry, John,
Yeah.
if you're driving on Colony,
Colony Ave, and if you're
It's
driving
on-
towards South Main, and
Thank
the
you.
big buildings on your right, it's that motel on your left. We'll call it a motel. It has the old Colony logo on it, the kind of scripty logo. Okay. About 13 years ago, we realized that building was running into some problems. We were getting a lot of noise complaints, so we threw 20 new bathrooms in there. We made some people happy. Then we soundproofed the walls, and that made some other people happy. Put in new carpeting, flat screen TVs. It was about 3 years ago when the hot water heater decided to die on us, and then I was traveling around the basement and realizing we were getting into some sort of bigger problems than just TVs and carpeting. Around that time, the Wilson property, some of you may know that. It's a hard building to see. It was a little brown house kind of tucked in behind the East House. It was owned by another family. We kind of surrounded it with Colony property. That became available. And so I sort of had this 1-2 punch of, all right, I've got a building that's really failing beyond anything else that we have going on over at the Colony. And now we have the Wilsons who are willing to sell us their property, which we kind of encompassed. And so I thought, all right, now's the time to start thinking about what should we do on that side of the road. So we looked around at some of these big hotels, you know, the Chatham Bars Inn, the Wauquasit, the Mount Washington Resort, sort of what are these guys doing? Are they actually renovating buildings? Are they knocking them down, building new buildings? And we realized we really kind of have to look at this side of the road with a whole new optic. So I got in touch with Elliot, and we bounced around some ideas, and then it kind of, nothing happened. We didn't do anything for a couple of years. It wasn't until this past year when the Reed property, the Fontenay Terrace, many of you know, at the bottom of the hill, came up for sale, or actually the Reeds offered it to us first. We were able to close on that. We actually closed on a Tuesday, and that's when I got Elliot back involved. So he sort of dusted off the plans, polished them up quite a bit, and that's when we came into town, started talking about what we could potentially do over there. I know Elliot I know Elliot personally, but I also know him from his projects around town. I have to say, I knew his projects before I knew Elliot. So the one I like to focus on is the one that's almost across the river, over the bridge by Chicks Marina on the left-hand side on Ocean Ave. I knew that house well as a kid, and when I saw them working on it, I was worried they were gonna ruin it and make a mansion or something that didn't make sense. And I was happy to see at the end that they kept the little door on the road and the little window next to it, and a whole bunch of the details about that house that I think are really speak to the details of that house originally. And so I thought Elliot would be a good match for us, trying to sort of be sensitive to what the colony is, but still build something potentially new. So I don't know. We started working on this about 3 years ago. Started again last summer. So that's where we ended up now. Elliot, you want to talk a little more detail about that? I mean, you told me to be brief. I'm being as brief as I possibly can.
You keep on going, but
All right. I'm happy to answer any historical questions, operational colony questions, if anyone has them. I can do it before or after, but yeah, Elliot's going to take you through the booklet.
Hey, John, I did not get one of these in the mail.
Well, you didn't. I'll
No.
tell you, why don't I give you mine? Is that okay with
Thank
you?
you, that'd be
Yeah,
fabulous.
great. You can have mine. I didn't ride on it too much.
That's all right.
Nor did I.
You know the property. Come on.
I know, I've been going there since I was
Since you were a
12.
kid. All right. Elliot.
When did heat come into the,
I'm sorry?
when did you get heat into the Colony Hotel?
That's a good question. So it's always had sort of electric baseboard heats. Those went in probably in the 60s. We have steam. We always had steam when we were operational. Ironically, the main building doesn't have air conditioning or televisions, the big building you see on the ocean. The East House, the building we're discussing, does have TVs and air conditioning, as does the Gallen House and some of our smaller homes. But we really don't heat the building other than the spring and fall. And we don't have winter water in any of our outbuildings. The East House doesn't have winter water, nor does the Gallen House at the bottom of the hill. So the two houses, the one that's over kind of by the Golden Farbs over on Ocean Ave, and the Florence House have always had heat and hot water for the winter, because I grew up in that house right by the entrance to the hotel, being caretakers when I was a kid. So heat was, it was kind of plug and play once we sort of, probably around the 70s is when they kind of got what we're working with now. But it's not heated. If they did one of those scans of the building in the wintertime, if we were heating it, it'd be bright white. I mean, it would, there's no insulation in the walls.
What year was that built? Guest house?
Which one, the East House? So
East House.
Well, the East House is a really interesting story, and Elliot's gonna talk about that, because it's been two things prior to. It was a hotel, and we knocked off the top 3 stories, and you've got a picture of that, and Elliot's gonna go through the timeline of that.
Great.
But the main building was 1913, 1914, yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, it looks good
Yeah.
for an old building,
Yeah.
so. Any other colony questions? And I can come circle back around if anyone, all right, Elliot, knock it down, there you go.
Got my question, I'll get one. Let me look on that. Quick gander.
Good evening. My name's Elliot Sidorides, president of Windward Development. We're a design-build firm out of New Canaan, Connecticut. We were privileged to be a part of this master plan with the Bounton Hotel Group, and I trust that most of you, hopefully all of you, got that booklet over Christmas break, and I hope you peruse through it. Rather than restate the narrative, which was fairly detailed, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the chair, is to make more of a graphic presentation. And I'll briefly go into the narrative, but not spend too much time on it. And then I'd like to go through the 21 pages of images, which would put you kind of in our head as to how we developed the design and what was the impetus for the design, if that's okay with the chair and the board. So the key elements for this northern campus, which is a collection of properties that was purchased over a period of 3.5 years by the Bounton Group and terminated, just this past week with the purchase of the Fontenay Hotel, is a collection of properties which comprises approximately 4 acres on the left-hand side or the northern side of the Colony Avenue. On the and we'll term that now the northern campus, for just clarity. And on the right-hand side of Colony Avenue, which we'll term the south campus, there is a collection of actually three properties that comprise approximately 8 acres of land. And so the challenges and the opportunity that we were faced with, if we continue to describe the property, is we start from the Fontenay Hotel, which is bordering the Edgewater Inn, which used to be the Green Heron, if you know that the history of it, has some difficulties in its streetscape and how the two properties are juxtaposed. So we start, that property that has been acquired starts from Ocean Avenue, and as you travel down to the south and hit the Colony Avenue and take a left, the property continues. There's currently mostly a parking lot on one section, and then as you continue, you're going to pass the Wilson House, which you can't really see because it's on the back end of the lot, and then continue to the East House on the left, which was another hotel. So let's first take a look at the first picture, circa 1947. If you take a look at your screen or the book, it's the first page. It gives you an aerial view of the jetty, which is a little bit longer then. It gives you a view of the Colony Hotel. Let's call it the New Colony Hotel, because before the Colony Hotel, there was another hotel, which I'll get into. And if you'll notice, the New Colony Hotel is facing south. On the left-hand side, there's a vacant lot, which is now the condominiums, Point Arundel. The continuing clockwise, you see the breakwater collection of buildings, and then you see an odd barn-shaped gambrel building, which is a very, very large building, and that is, I'll get into it a little bit later, but it was a rental car facility for the Ocean Bluff Hotel, which burned down, and in its place is now the New Colony Hotel. As you continue clockwise, you'll see another tall building in the back, which is part of our new northern campus, and that was a 5-story, 50-room hotel called the Oceanic, and in back of that you see some of the ancillary buildings for the Oceanic and the Rita Wilson, and the Wilson House on the edge of Fairfield Creek, which is a creek that it doesn't lose its water. It's dammed by the Army Corps, and it's a really beautiful creek that is rarely seen unless you just catch a glimpse of it on Sunny's Bridge. Continuing clockwise, you see the Gallon House, which is a tall building right at the corner of the Colony property. You see the Foundry, which they have meetings in down low, which is a brick structure. And then to the right, you see the Arlington Arms in that picture. The next picture that we'll take a look at is the car rental building, which it was called the Ocean Bluff building, and that housed numerous cars, 40, 50 cars, and people would travel by train, stay at the Colony, and rent cars. It was a walking town then. It still is a walking town through its pedestrian walkways to the center of Kennebunkport. And this building, in its footprint, much smaller, is now the Fontenay Terrace. Not the same building. It was taken down, and on that same partial footprint is the Fontenay Terrace. Next picture is the Ocean Bluff Hotel. And if you look at the picture carefully, that is not the beach in front of the Ocean Bluff, it's the river. So the Ocean Bluff was oriented completely differently than the colony, the new colony. It was oriented east-west. And the river was surrounded by 3 bodies of water, but their views were to the river and to the ocean. The smallest side was facing the ocean, interestingly enough.
It was oriented north-south.
What's that?
It was oriented north-south?
Yes, or the shortest distances. The smallest faces are north-south, biggest face is east-west. You're looking at the west, and the banks of the river, which was a part of the, most of the activity back then was on the river banks. Next picture is what was left of the Ocean Bluff after the fire, which was not much.
What are the years of the Ocean Bluff and then the destruction of it?
So, and John can clarify a little bit more, but I would say that was prior to 1940.
Yeah, 89 is when the fire happened. So that's when the fire, 1872 was when the Ocean Bluff was built. 89 was when it burned down. And then the land, and I've got some great photos if anyone wants to see them in my office, the land sat for many years before the Nortons built it. It's a John Calvin Stevens design, who also did a lot of the resorts right around that same neighborhood. And that was built over the winter of 13-14, opened as what we now think of the Colony Hotel without the north wing in 1914.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Next picture shows the Oceanic. And the Oceanic, if you understood how the Ocean Bluff Hotel was oriented, had an ocean view. And after the colony was built, obviously that ocean view disappeared, which is interesting because the hotel itself had some architectural quality to it. But after the colony was built, it sat in the same orientation. That's the orientation of the Colony Hotel. Next picture, please. So this is the picture of the colony under construction. As you see, the main part of it.
So, hang on, so the previous slide
Go
is what is now the east, is this the
Yes,
east house now?
yes,
This
yes.
is now the east house.
That
okay.
is now the east house with 3 stories taken off of it and now consists of 20 rooms,
Okay,
where before it was 50 rooms.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
If you look closely at that picture, though, you'll see the house next to it on the right is still there.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
actually a very nice example of a house on Cape Arundel, and many of them are great examples, but that's a very well-preserved example. And then the back of the Oceanic those structures are still there. The chef's house that John calls it, and then another house which houses 4 or 5 rooms in it.
Okay, thank you.
So the next picture shows the colony under construction. And it shows the topography of it, which is, again, one of the most beautiful pieces of property in Kennebunkport. Next picture, please. This picture, I would say, judging from the wide rim glasses and the fashions, is in the 60s. Or a little earlier, shuffleboard courts where they are now, stone wall where it is now, and you're looking on the Colony Avenue, and across the street you see the Oceanic with the circular driveway, what is now the East House.
Okay.
Next picture, please. So we get to another aerial shot a little bit later in time, maybe 5 or 6 years later than the first shot. You'll see that the Colony and the Bountons dressed the beach with sand, set up chairs. It shows all the same structures, more growth on the vegetation, a lot of mixtures of Norways, sea rose, pines are developing into mature pieces. but you'll also see that piece of property in the back, which is a sizable piece, going all the way to the Gambrel car rental. And then behind that, if you look very closely, you'll see the Edgewater that is completely taken out of the picture by that building. Next picture, please. So here we are. We're developing our site plan, which is very large, too large for a piece of paper. And what you'll see in this site plan is you'll see the beach on the left side, top left, which the Colony owns, a portion of that Colony beach. You'll see Ocean Avenue, and you'll see the Boughton House, the Colony proper, and you'll see kind of a truncated crescent drive on the front, let's call it the south campus. You'll also see, the picture's cut off a little bit because the screen's cut off, but you'll see a separate survey of the Gallant House on the bottom left, there it is, which is separate because it couldn't fit on the page. And then you'll see the Foundry, which is a meeting house, and 2 dormitories perpendicular to the Crescent and Colony Avenue on the south campus, if you look carefully at that. On the north campus, where the Colony Road is, you'll see the East House, which was the Oceanic. You'll see a couple of buildings behind that, which are the Rita Wilson House and ancillary buildings to the East House. And if you go up on the top of that page, which again has to get lower because the drawing's too big, you'll see a parking lot and a matched line on the top right, which doesn't show the Fontenay because it's too big of a site. But my subsequent drawings and images will show that. But that's really our existing conditions map, kind of the Bible that we're going by, the start of our process.
Do I understand that this is a 1995 drawing?
It's a 1995 drawing with an updated parcel of the Rita Wilson property in 2017. Yes.
This is the one that's in the package, that's the Colony Hotel, the Colony Ave is called Old Kings Highway on it?
Yes, that's
Right,
correct.
So this is a sketch, in other words, this is,
Oh, no, this is a survey.
It's a real survey.
It's a real survey.
Real
It's
survey.
a survey done by Down Columb, and it's a survey that's accurate in terms of buildings that are there and the addition to the Rita Wilson House, which was purchased 2 years ago, but it does not have the Fontenay Terrace Hotel, which was just purchased.
so if I could get my magnifying glass, the dates that are in the lower right-hand corner, do you know what the lowest one says? What year?
You know what, I can't,
Okay, I was
but
just,
but I certainly will
I was just
supply you that.
trying to date it. On
The
the
lowest
largest,
one has to be a year and a half ago because,
2019.
they just purchased the Rita Wilson House. If I'm not mistaken, John, you can fill us in.
So if the Wilson House is on there, then it's an updated one that they did 2 years ago, because prior to that, we just had an empty hole where the Wilson House, they didn't do the survey prior to that. And we've got the original copy, we can give you the exact.
no, we did the iPhone trick. This is June the 10th, 2019.
And there will be another.
I didn't get that when I read this originally. I thought, oh, this is an interesting drawing from 1995, and I never
No,
thought
no.
any more than that.
No, it's current.
All right.
And there will be an updated survey because the Fontenay just closed. So
Understood.
that's already being done, but the surveyors take quite a while to get that processed.
All right.
The next picture, please. So this is, if you could just slide that up a little, this is probably one of the most important images that I want to present to this board to give some perspective to the site its relationship to the town of Kennebunkport and its scale in terms of land. So if you just scroll up a bit, that's perfect. If you look at the bottom right corner, that is the town of Kennebunkport. That circle is the town of Kennebunkport. And the circle is made up of fishing shacks, pile supported. Underneath the whole town is really water. And the size of that circle is mostly hardscape. There is no green, no town green. And the traveling from Kennebunkport town to the colony, which is approximately 1 mile, you'll pass a green, which is in front of Lord Jefferds' mansion, which is really the town's town green, if you will. There are events there, craft fairs and so forth. It's a kind of a relief valve for the town. There's no other place for the town or people who visit Kennebunkport to gather. We walk it every day. It's a great walk. The pedestrian walk to the colony, now, much like it was back in the, in older times, is pretty much similar to what you'd find today with very little change. But as you walk up that mile, you'll see hotels, motels. Most of their parking is on the street. There is no curb. Cars kind of pile off the street, and the hotels are the faces of the hotels are close to the road. As you go up to the Colony campus, you'll look at that image, and you'll see that roughly 6 sizes of Kennebunkport will fit in that bubble diagram that you see, to give you a sense of the size of acreage which the Colony is fortunate to have. Not many hotels have that capability, and therefore don't have any relief valves. They have to valet park, they have to outsource areas that are green, all kinds of things that piece of property possesses. So how do we overcome those challenges that we have in our program of developing the new North Campus? Perhaps that North Campus would extend the season, since it's going to be winterized, since it's going to be able to accommodate and extend the season well into the winter. That's what John is hoping that and the Boughton Hotel hopes to have, and still be able to shut down the South Campus and still make it attractive. So the challenge is, when you enter Cape Arundel, which is a historic neighborhood, and you have some amazing examples of architecture, and you are also using that entrance as a gateway to the colony, you have to be sensitive, one, to the Cape Arundel neighborhood. And we found an opportunity to create this, to complete the crescent, if you will. And this colony road bisects this crescent. And to create this green space of roughly 2 acres, or a little less, of green space in the middle of the colony road, and bisect that road, and it was an opportunity for us to set the buildings back from the road, so that when people would travel through to Cape Arundel, you would be traveling into a residential neighborhood, but at the same time, when you turn up the Colony Avenue, you're entering a place that is a park-like setting that is different than the normal experience of entering a hotel. And the way the Colony was sited originally with the Crescent, because of its size, it's much more of a taller building than it's allowed in the northern campus, even from scratch. But it really, when you set a building like that back and plant it correctly, it's not as massive. Of course, the North Campus, what we develop on the North Campus, has to be scaled in a residential scale, dealing with height restrictions and so forth. But we still felt setting that North Campus back organizes the parking better, parking's off the road, and the first thing you see is this quiet, park-like setting, not formal garden, or not a formal park, but much more of an indigenous, park-like setting with a rolling terrain and indigenous trees, much of what they would have been original. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we started with, the first thing I brought to John's attention was, I sketched this, and he said, well, where are the buildings? You know, so the sketch is to show him kind of the image of the road first, the infrastructure, getting the power lines off the poles, burying them, creating the mirror image of the right-hand entrance to the left-hand entrance, and only having 2 curb cuts around the park rather than the 5 or 6 that they have now, and setting those buildings back, whatever we build, behind at least 100 to 150 feet back from the road, so that a person who lives on Cape Arundel or on South Main Street gets the experience that they're walking through a rural neighborhood rather than walking through buildings that are up against the Colony Avenue, which there are now. If you walk up now, on the right-hand side, you'll see the dormitories right up against the Colony. On the right, those are the dormitories. And then on the left, the East House is very close to the road. Next slide, please. So then we started talking about and developing this master plan with the Colony bisecting the this park that we're creating. And if you just slide the picture down a bit, so we could just look at the top half and the bottom half. Top first, please. Thank you. You see that I've added the Fontenay Terrace property, but the Fontenay is not there. So we started with
I'm sorry, where is it?
Yeah, where's Fontenay?
top right is where the Fontenay Terrace is now. It's attached now to the plan. If you see that match line, that is to the left of that building. That,
Oh, I see. Okay.
see it? That's where the survey ended. And now I've added that, so you can actually see that parcel. And of course, that parcel is being taken up by a total building right now. What we're showing is a very small building there that is to scale with the Edgewater or smaller and Mabel's lobster restaurant. So that basically when you pass by Mabel's or pass by the Colony Avenue towards town, you will see the Edgewater and you'll see Fairfield Creek in the background. Fairfield Creek is that creek that doesn't lose water that I was referring to before. There's a lot of names to it. There's Sonny's Creek, there's all kinds of names. I'm calling it Fairfield Creek. But that's going to be an open vista. And what is now the Fontenay building, which is right up against the Edgewater, if you walk, there's not even 3 feet between it, that is going to go away. And that is going to be an entrance to a walk that is a pathway that lines Fairfield Creek. And I'll get back to that in a second. But continuing around, you'll see in the second building, which is a reception building at the curve of Ocean Avenue and Colony Avenue, which is the reception building, a market, and a couple of rooms above that. So the restaurant will have a couple of rooms above it. The market and reception area will have a couple of rooms above it. And then as you continue down Colony Avenue, you see 3 blocks of buildings that have openings through them that are not solid. So you'll be able to walk through this network of walkways and sidewalks and parks and go through to Fairfield Creek. People will be able to walk through this network of pathways and experience the water body that no one really knows about.
Are you proposing to clean up Fairfield Creek then as part of this? I mean, if I look at that now, it's got felled trees and
Oh, yes.
it,
I mean,
and I have a hard time buying into this, it doesn't lose its water. It seems to me that there's a tidal aspect to it.
there is a tidal aspect, but there's a dam that is built, and I invite you to come, and I'll certainly would like to do a site visit with the board.
Yeah, yeah.
We've done that on many projects before, when it's negotiable in terms of, you know, getting a dry day, we'll make a little pathway to mimic what we're talking about. It's a very,
So is the creek on the property that has been
Yes.
acquired?
yeah,
Okay.
well.
Or is it the
creek-
midline of it, or is
No,
it
the
not?
creek runs all the way around the north campus. If you look at this drawing that you see now, and I'll go back to well, if you look at that edge of the water, and you see that pathway where the dock is, go down to the bottom, that's,
Use the cursor, would you, to show me? Okay.
see the cursor?
Right, so does,
How do you work that?
so the property abuts
Here.
the creek or includes the creek?
The property borders the creek, and it has riparian rights onto the creek,
All right, as do the abutters on the other side?
of course,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Is there any movement to take out that dam?
I'm sorry?
Is there any movement to take out that dam?
No, I hope not, no.
On the other side, there's really only one other house, isn't there?
The Webster's house and the McDougal's house,
Oh, McDougal's borders too.
yes. But that walkway is worth seeing
Oh, yeah.
and worth walking because it's all ledge and it rises from that creek almost 14 feet. The walkway we're proposing is gonna be a fairly level on the contour, very narrow, not paved because it's within the 75 feet. But we want it to be more of a nature walk that people can walk down South Main, connect, and go right to Mabel's from the entrance, which is right at the end of the colony. But it is worth the board take a look at that and actually
Yeah.
experience it
That'd be
in the
wonderful.
future.
Your sketch, your earlier sketch does not agree with this plan. Because your earlier sketch, looking up the Colony Avenue, or Old Kings Highway, shows a plan for a little stone wall and lighting, and your sketch, if you were coming up that way, what you're gonna see are mostly, according to this, trees instead of a little stone wall, and you're gonna see some parking spaces along the side.
No, the sketch that you're referring to is an overlay on what is a picture. So all I did was draw the sketch of the road, but I didn't take out the trees or the overhead wires. I just wanted to show John how we would overlay just the street on it. If you look at the right-hand side of that sketch, there is a stone wall entering the colony.
Yes.
And what I was proposing, just as the first entry to the colony, on the left side to mimic that. So that's just an overlay, but I didn't remove any trees or didn't draw the park in.
Yeah, but what I'm seeing is, where you have your stone wall and you're gonna put it in on the other side, the second sketch shows trees there, it doesn't show a stone wall.
There'll be stone walls, entrances at each of the crescents.
Okay.
You're talking about the
and
second,
trees.
you're talking about the second curb cut. I see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, that's, we will, in our future presentations,
make it agree.
absolutely. But the idea, the whole idea here is to just give you a sense of how we're progressing with the concept. But yes, the idea is to continue the crescent in a uniform way, and to wrap a sidewalk all the way around the crescent, but not wrap a sidewalk around the park. We're not lining the oval, if you look at that sketch, we're not lining a sidewalk around where the parking board is that we're only
No.
introducing another sidewalk on the straight part of the colony.
No, I understand that. It's just that it didn't, the sketch didn't
Yes.
look like the plan here.
Yeah, you're correct on that. But
Are you saying that you're proposing a sidewalk along Colony Avenue?
Yes.
Within the oval?
Colony Avenue bisects the oval.
Yes?
So if you look at the south side of Colony Avenue, you'll see a red paved
it.
area.
Yep.
And that is along the stone wall that abuts the shuffleboard courts.
Yep.
And we feel that it's for safety, because Colony Avenue is not that wide. We want to introduce a sidewalk there because it's a very well-trafficked pedestrian route. And for safety, we felt we talked to the town manager and the highway department, and they feel it would be a big benefit for us.
Are you going to be putting in native trees and native shrubs?
Yes, only natives,
Okay.
not things that die every year.
Well, not invasives.
That's right.
One of the things you probably are concerned about is the public versus private access to and use of the property, the safety of the people that are of course, paying good money to stay at the Colony Hotel, and yet the public's access to the park, if you will. How do you feel about all of
We're
that?
very concerned about it, but part of the colony's culture, as John started to talk about, and since I was a kid, I lived across the street from the colony, it was a much more exclusive place at one time. John's brought that it's a different feel to the colony now. So the idea of the public, which it does now, uses the shuffleboard courts, walks their dogs through whatever grass area there is now, I think is something that, and I'm not gonna speak for John, but he's developed over the years, and it's made the colony, unlike other hotel developments, a much more inclusive, much more authentic main experience than you would find perhaps in other examples. So,
Just to give you an idea, we only had.
Microphone.
Oh, sure. Just to comment on that really quickly on the public coming.
Yeah.
To give you some hard numbers on that, the Colony Hotel guest count last summer was approximately a little under 50,000 people. We had 85,000 people come on property last summer. So more than double the number of people who stay at the hotel come and enjoy the property, whether they're coming for lunch or for a Mariners buffet on a Friday night, or the 2,000 from the 4th of July. So, and those are rough estimates because we can't count everybody. But yeah, we do have concerns, but we also try to monitor and make a safe place for people who aren't staying at the hotel, who are enjoying the beach. I mean, they walk on the beach every day with their dogs, and so we see a lot of bodies coming through the hotel. We do a history tour once a week, and we see lots of people on that who aren't staying at the hotel. The trolley actually stops there, and he says, "Get out, go take a look at the," and I see 40 people get off the trolley and come in and look and take a picture, and then they get back on the trolley and keep going. So we're encouraging it, but we also are concerned about it, making sure that steps are right and the lighting is good and everything is there for people to enjoy it.
Obviously, you know, since we're talking about this as a sketch plan, one of the most difficult parts, I would think, would be the parking plan for this. And how do you provide parking for your patrons? And
Oh, yeah.
And yet, I'm sure even today you have pressure
Well,
from those
we
who are
ha-
trying to use the Colony Beach and all of that, so.
We have some pressure, but I would have to say we're probably the luckiest property in town as far as parking goes. So
Yeah.
we're definitely, we're flush on parking comparatively speaking, so. All right.
but getting back to your question about public versus private, the diagram that I showed you before, which is an aerial diagram of the Google map, this hotel and this landmark, this property, is as much a part of Kennebunkport town in terms of an experience as the town itself, in my view. It is walked by thousands each day, and their destination is not necessarily Walker's Point, because a lot of people can't walk that far. It is mostly the Colony, St. Anne's, the Colony Beach, and then they turn around and come back. It's a 2-mile walk. And it's done, we do it, you know, twice a day. You know, most people who live there do it, but it's a huge part of the identity of Kennebunkport. And we hope will continue and be strengthened by our proposal.
I love what I'm hearing. I just want to be careful about people taking a look at this and saying, oh, they're privatizing Colony Avenue. Look at that.
No, you know, it's, Colony Avenue is a right-of-way, it's a public road.
I know it is today.
If anything, people will look at this and want to publicize the park, in my opinion. I don't think there's going to be much issue about privatizing Colony Avenue. If anything, it's going to enhance the neighborhood of people who live there. Anyone who lives on South Main Street, I don't think will, the neighbors will probably say, you know, can we use the park? I think that will be the, and I think that's a positive. I don't think that's a negative.
Well, you're saying that it isn't a given that they will be able to use the park, that they will
It's a
be
given.
asking and it will be negotiated?
It's a given that they're able to use it and
Oh, okay.
if they want to come to the colony, but I don't think the Boughton family is looking to donate the park, you know, but
So it will be a private park?
it's a private park, but
Open to the public.
open to the public in terms of their culture.
The definition of a park.
There is nothing in the area of Dock Square that is private. I can tell you from the number of people that come down my
Exactly.
private drive.
Yeah.
Right.
Even
Well,
with signs that say no trespassing,
Right, and
they just do.
if there was, I think that would result in people rioting. You know, I think,
Well, I don't know that they would riot, but I think they'd be concerned. I have to share with you that I showed this brochure to some others, and it jumped right out at people that it talks about what a great hotel it is that has its own private beach. And people look
everybody
at that and
uses
say,
the
what are you
beach.
talking
Public-
about?
But
the public
everyone
beach.
uses it.
you know, I don't see the validity in the comment. So,
You can take it as you wish. I'm offering it only in the spirit of information.
yeah, I don't understand it, really. I don't understand where it's coming from, because if it was private, then
I
it
think
would be,
people
there
are-
there would be people down there shooing people
No,
off
no,
every
it
day.
says in your brochure that it's private.
It's privately owned, but
It's
the public
privately
use
owned,
it.
but I don't think
Just like
it
Parsons Beach.
says anything about excluding people.
No, you can't get a parking space there. It's the only place in Kennebunkport that has free parking on the beach.
I don't know where
That's right.
my narrative says that.
The combined campuses will have amenities that very few hotels possess. These will include, number one, a private beach.
Well, they own the beach.
I'm not looking for an explanation, I'm just telling you what a reaction is to this and the way it's worded. Enough said.
Well, I can't,
I'm not gonna argue the point.
No, everybody in town and people outside the town, people that stay in our inn, everybody, we always say, go to the Colony Hotel, because it's free parking,
right.
their beach. And everyone goes there. The only problem is you can hardly get a space,
Oh, yeah.
a parking
Right.
space. It's, because everyone loves it.
Right, but by definition, it's privately owned.
Okay.
You know, we're not looking to, I don't think we're looking to make it any different than that.
You're not gonna put a fence up?
No.
No.
There we go.
Never kicked anyone off Colony Beach.
There we go.
And we'll clarify that for the subsequent hearings.
As someone who lives on South Main Street. Currently, there is no public access to the creek, other than walking along South Main Street.
That's right.
Okay.
So we're, that end of it as well, that nature walk that we talked about on the creek is something that is open to the public.
Okay.
That's the idea of the nature walk.
It's a dramatic little gorge through there.
So let's go to the next picture if we can. And that's just a cleaned up version of the plan. I want to just spend a little bit more time on the south campus and just go over a couple things. If you look at the service parking area, oh, thank you. It's been about to slide every minute. If you look at the south service area, you'll see a parking lot there, and you'll see that the Foundry building was moved up towards the smooth crescent, away.
Could you use the cursor? Here. It just makes it easier.
So look at you see that building there that we're proposing? That is the size of what currently is the Foundry, but we're moving it away from the private properties on the bottom toward the smoothed out crescent, which we're smoothing out. And if you look at the dotted lines underneath the building, because of the grade drop, we're incorporating the dormitories under one building, which is now 3 buildings. We're gonna take down 3 buildings and put back 1. And if you look at the dotted line towards the ocean, which is where the cursor is now, I think, you see that stretch? That's going to be underground with a green roof dormitory for all the help. And we're gonna create green space there so that people looking from the colony rooms will look down to a green space, but they'll have a glass facade facing the parking lot, the dormitories. As you travel down along that, you'll see an orange corridor, and that is a service corridor, and that service corridor goes up to the kitchen area. It's like a street. We're gonna create a street for the employees where they can gather and instead of scattering around, finding places to walk into town or gather, this will be a 20-foot wide street, approximately 75 feet long, on a decline that will have areas for employees to have some private time, and also be the service road for the trucks coming in, servicing the kitchen. Now we have 2 service roads currently. So we have a service road right where that parking lot is, and then we have a service road where the cursor is pointing now onto Colony Avenue. We're reducing the curb cuts and service roads to 1 location for service. But that secondary road that we're creating will service both the kitchen area, which is a story and a half up, and also the meeting house, which is to the right of the service road, which because of the grade is 2 stories. So you'll only see 1 story at the grade level of the crescent, and then if you go down behind the service road, you'll see a subterranean level, and that will house the dormitories and the shop, which houses paint shops and furniture storage and so forth, which is now comprised of 3 buildings.
There's a slope there, if I remember correctly. Is that where you're going to put the first level? Because
Yes.
otherwise you're gonna be doing an awful lot of blasting.
Yes.
Okay.
We've cited it, and there's a difference of about 14 feet from where the smooth curve's gonna be, so that people with handicap, they can go to the meeting house instead of climbing stairs, and it's in close proximity to the kitchen, which will be able to serve the meeting house instead of going down to the rear lot. It also moves those facilities away from the residential properties. I want to just briefly talk about that, and that's part of our 5-year, overall plan. Obviously, this all can't be done at once because the workings of the hotel can't be interrupted. The other thing that's very important to us as design builders is we want to not interfere not only with the hotel operations, but you don't do the infrastructure work or road work in the summer. We'd like to get that started in the fall and stop construction for the summer, not continue it. So whether we were working on the North Campus or the infrastructure, we would shut the process down in May so that the town, because this is the type of project that could really interfere with circulation. It could interfere for noise issues, and the hotel guests and the public. So it all has to be organized in such a way where you can't do this project all at once. It has to be phased. Let's go to the next picture, please. So as we started developing this crescent on the north side, and we're focusing now back on the north campus, we're talking and looking at buildings with openings connecting several smaller scale buildings with openings to go through to the creek, different types of architecture, more like a New England village, not the same type of architecture, mixing gambrel, shingle-style architecture with clapboard and red roof architecture such as the Colony has. But if you look at this little small vignette, you'll see that the initial ideas of the parking areas, organization, entrance to the oval, park, and entrance to the middle building, for instance, and the path and the connections so that you walk through to the creek and the walkways is starting to be developed. Next picture, please. These are the buildings, if you're looking from the creek up towards, Fairfield Creek up towards the corner, you'll see a small building next to the Edgewater, which would be the hotel restaurant, a couple of rooms above that, scaled correctly. To the right, you see some people between the trees. That's the start of the nature walk in scale. And then you see the grade slightly go up. That's the reception area of the winter village, we call it, the extended stay North Campus, and then a couple of rooms above that, which is a gambrel. And this is kind of the idea of incorporating a village-style architecture rather than a big box architecture like you would see in some hotels. It is cheaper to build a big box, and of course, the scale of the Colony is much different than what we're proposing, but we also want it to feel like it's a village. Next picture, please. This is an example of a little bit more of a developed middle building, which is a two-story structure. It happens to have a hipped roof and a gable punch-out, which is a center building. That would, and it's not, designed fully, but it would relate, that center line or that center opening would relate to the front entrance through the Oval Park to the main hotel entrance, have some visual relationship to it. And if you look from to the right and to the left, there are open spaces below looking through to the Fairfield Creek. Just an example of a start to think about the facade, start to think about the materials and scale. And next picture, please. So this diagram is overlaid on the survey, and again, it doesn't show the Fontenay Terrace, but if you just lower that a bit, please. Yeah. The North Campus is shown, but the Fontenay is not. It shows existing impervious areas. It shows building and parking areas that they traditionally use, and islands and so forth. If you slide up the northern campus or the southern campus, you'll see the three buildings we intend to take out. And if you notice, the buildings, both on the southern and northern campus, are close to the Colony Avenue. We're proposing to pull all those buildings away from that road, so it really becomes a much quieter experience for not only people who are walking the road, but for the neighbors. Our distances from any residential building or house, take, for example, 16 Colony Avenue, the example of that architecture that I told you before, we're about 100 feet away versus what's now the East House is about 60 feet away from the first building and setback.
Will you still have weddings and banquets in the main?
Oh, yeah,
building?
it's part of what we do in the main building is exactly, we do, all our facilities will still be operating normally. I do think, though, that if we move that, Elliot's calling it the foundry, closer to the driveway, it may be more attractive for groups. Right now, they have to kind of walk by those dormitories and down the slope to go in that brick building. I think if we move that closer to the driveway and it'll be more handicapped accessible, people will be able to explore that building and utilize that more. Right now, getting a bride to go down there is impossible because it's over the river and through the woods. But now I think it'll be more, if we can move it up closer to the driveway.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of noise for guests, because my daughter's wedding was at the Colony recently, and I noticed in looking at reviews that one of the biggest complaints is that the wedding music is so loud that the guests have trouble with it.
Yes, it is, and we end our weddings traditionally at 9 PM, and when we go till 10 PM, and that's the latest we go anyways, we have people take the 14 rooms over. We have more complaints about people coming home at 1 AM from Federal Jacks, not from
okay.
the wedding. The complaints are the drunk guys walking around the hallways.
But your point is valid.
Yes.
Your point is valid, and what I'm trying to do by designing what we're designing is my push to John, and we keep on pushing this, is when we develop a campus like this, there's more room to spread out. And the noise, by spreading out and utilizing these green spaces, because now there's a green space, for instance, that is gonna be by Fairfield Creek, because we're taking out the Fontenay Terrace. There's a green space that's gonna be in the Oval. The congestion that happens at the Colony, because I live next door to it, really happens where the money shot is, which is the pool and the bar and all of those areas. What I believe this proposal will do will spread the population in the Colony, and they will, if the spaces are done well, they will utilize those interior spaces and and make the noise less.
That's a great point. So will those other three properties across the street, will there be a restaurant in one of them and a bar in one of them? Is this down near the water?
Well,
That creek?
if you go back to the site plan that we drew, which is a couple of, the colored one, if you go back to that one, right there, if you look at the top right corner, you see where the Fontenay Terrace was, that property.
Yeah.
That will house a small restaurant, very small restaurant with a patio. In front of that is about an acre and a half of green space down to Fairfield Creek. That can easily house a wedding, and no one would even hear it in the front of the Colony. So these green spaces are not money losers, in my opinion. They are areas that would be attractive for people who wanted to have a wedding at the Colony and have have areas that they can utilize that are just as beautiful as looking out on the water.
Yeah.
That's the idea of this. So let's just go back. So there'll be a restaurant. We want to also try to introduce perhaps a market for the hotel, but, people who are walking on the pedestrian walk can use the market. It wouldn't be a market like at HB Provisions, but it would be a place to get coffee, a place to get a simple breakfast that's baked by the Colony restaurant. They bake a lot of sweets and pies and the whole bit. They have the capability to bake and actually put it somewhere else. They don't have to have a kitchen because they have that facility. So it's the idea of, again, a self-contained village, but open to people who are
That's fantastic.
walking on Ocean Avenue. But a bar, they already have I don't think John will speak, I don't think he wants to have another
We're good.
bar.
We've got a big enough bar. There may be something down by the Fontenay Terrace
Yep.
property, but nothing in the three buildings. We're good.
Excuse me.
So the last picture, which of course we'll get into in our next, or the next proposal, shows the North Campus only, because I want to really focus, and Werner stressed the fact that, show your 75-foot mark of where the critical edge is or the resource protection is, show the coverage calculations below it, show the coverage calculations above it, show what's existing, show what's proposed, and I'm gonna just really quickly go through that because we're gonna be going through this again, but I wanna briefly go through it so that you can start to understand it. And just for now, look at the picture of the colored picture. The green, let's say, represents grass or pervious space. And that's still going to be pervious and grass,
Could you just help me, orient me? Where is Fairview Creek on this?
right on the bottom.
Okay.
That whole
Thank you, thank
coastline
you.
of approximately, let's call it, 1,200 linear feet of coastline. The next time we come in, I'll paint that, I'll call it.
I was just
paint it
looking
blue.
for a compass rose even, but yeah, I
Yeah.
got you.
So this is, the green represents on the north campus only. We're not going into the south campus, because that's fully developed. The green represents pervious, and it will remain pervious. And it will be grass, pathways, which we're not showing. Werner says anything you do within that 75 feet, you can't pave. So those nature walks that we were talking about before, they're gonna be graded, packed, but not impervious. And they won't be wide for, a 5-foot walk. They'll be a nature walk, essentially. The red or pink represents, it represents impervious now, but will become pervious. So the red are buildings or parking lots that are either closer to Fairfield Creek, or buildings that are closer to Fairfield Creek, or parking areas that are closer to Fairfield Creek within that 75-foot setback, that will become green again. They will become pervious. That applies to the blue and the pink above the 75-foot marks too. So if you look above the 75-foot marks, which is different jurisdiction, if you will, different categories, the same thing applies. The green is the pervious, the red will become pervious, the blue is impervious, and will remain impervious, and the yellow is either new parking lot or building. So that's kind of a brief, it's a, and the graph on the opposite page shows you and explains to you what's below the 75 feet and what's above the 75 feet, on the opposite page. And what we're trying to,
Help me with below and above. Below is, which one is closer to the water?
below.
Thank you.
So when you look at the deltas of the two, the below, we're under.
Under, yeah.
The above, we're under. So the goal is, having not fully designed it with overhangs and so forth, because they count as coverage, we don't want to commit to the delta yet. What we want to commit to you is that we are going to stay even or lower. And once we get to the final detail of the concepts, we'll have those exact calculations. Survey will do those calculations. But for this sketch plan, we just wanted to show you quickly the ideas that we're putting forth. And then the last picture, please, which I'm not going to go through because there's so much information on it, that's really more for Werner, who looks at this stuff all day. He enjoys it. But that is our buildings on top of the pervious, impervious, showing the 75-foot line on one map. That's the kind of detail that we're going to need to proceed. I did it pretty quickly. So I invite any kind of questions or comments.
So,
I'd like,
go ahead, I'm sorry, Ian. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a couple of comments in terms of what I've seen on the sketch plan. You're still going to have buildings below the critical edge, and you're along a river. You're on an ocean front. And I'm going to bring up my big environmental problem, as usual. The fact that 4 billion birds have been killed by, half of them at least by crashing into glass. In fact, New York City has just passed an ordinance that says that glass has to be either bird safety glass or bird-friendly design throughout the whole of New York City for any new designs, and I'm going to say the same thing here. You're going to have shorebirds. You've got shorebirds all along there. You've got migrating birds. And any new windows put in fact, I would suggest any old windows facing the ocean, should have some sort of bird safety precautions on them to keep birds from killing themselves on them. The other,
By the way, we did do that when we put the replacement windows on the ocean side. We put screens in that weren't in existence before.
that's great,
So we did that. That was a $500,000 project.
that's great,
So, yeah.
that's great. They now make glass that has materials in it.
Yes.
Right.
That
We do work in the city, that's a very, it's a very good ordinance. What's benefiting us here is the way we propose to landscape these, it also attributes to that problem and solution. So if you plant, such as the renderings that we're showing, larger trees very close to the building, and not have large glass panels where the birds really don't know and they can't see, it benefits it. So any kind of shade tree that's closer along the side, as we drew in our first kind of vignette, shows that we're intending on planting along that sidewalk trees that are actually very close to the windows. That also helps. And the sunlight, having too much sun and glare has an issue with the birds as well.
Oh, yeah, the reflection.
So if you don't have that reflection, it's safer for the birds in
It is,
addition.
and also having trees and places they perch very close to the windows means they can't get up speed.
Right.
But you still need to, you'll still have, because you've got a little park there, and you'll have trees and birds.
And a lot of birds.
You know, you need to do something about the safety. The other thing is that we've lost a great population of insects. And part of that problem is lighting at night, like lightning bugs, you'll see a decrease in them. And I noticed that your lighting design there in your sketch plan has a light that has no top to it, on it, and light should really be directed downward, and it should be dimmer.
Yeah, again, don't take those
I'm
really quick
not.
sketches.
I'm just,
The-
you
the-
know,
the li-
thinking
the-
ahead.
The lights that we're proposing for the street will probably be far less than what is shown. I was just trying to give him a sense of what I was trying to achieve. But, the lights in town, I think, are the ones on the sidewalk there. They do have covers on them, don't they? We're interested in very dim lighting and not really having lighting on the buildings. We want this to feel like a residential park at night, not to have the park lit either too much, but just where the shuffleboard courts are. And we're not necessarily looking to light the interior of that oval either. Just enough light so people can
Well,
park.
If for safety reasons, you have to have some lights at night, you're a hotel, people are gonna walk around, but you can put down lower lights around the pathways and so they can see the path, but, it's not directing upward.
Yeah, I mean, the lighting that I would kind of shoot for here would be fairly subtle lighting that will light some of the mature trees that we're saving in the park, and not necessarily smaller, lower posts, because those get trashed in the winter with the snow removal and so forth. But, try to make as much ambient, low-lit light so you can get around and it's safe. I don't know what kind of lighting there is now on the parking lot.
Minimal.
Yeah. I think because they're you're also in a neighborhood, they're very sensitive to that.
Yes. Yes, just thinking ahead.
So your plan basically is to come to us with just this part here first, right?
Well, my plan is to bring you, Werner's suggestion would, because it's such a large piece, what we want to try to do is develop a schedule and commit to the schedule in terms of the construction, not in terms of the planning process, but after the planning process is over, let's say we were approved for something, to develop a plan, 3 parts. The first part is the North Campus and how that would be scheduled in terms of summer, winter. The second part, and not in any specific order, is the infrastructure, is the road. Because the road is one of the most important things to get done while nobody's around. And get it done and stub out what we need to stub out. And then the third is to reorganize some of the pieces on the southern campus in the off-season so that it doesn't interfere with the workings of the hotel. Part of doing that is perhaps keeping the Fontenay building and taking the rest of the buildings down on the North Campus so that they can house their employees and get the infrastructure and the road done first, then perhaps build the underground dormitories on the South Campus so that that could be done off-season while not interrupting the hotel operations. And then you're able to then take that whole North Campus and build it without interfering with anybody.
Okay, so.
But that has to be presented, I think, unless Werner disagrees, as 2 separate parcels with the road bisecting the parcels, because the park and the green space is part of all of this. So I think you present it as a whole, but phase it.
Well, I understand that, but it would be one site plan then, Werner? For the whole mess that we would,
certainly the
we would
colony
see
can
it.
present it, can present it however they wish, but, as we've been talking, thinking about the timing of it and, in terms of timeframes and of how long approvals are valid, and looking at a project that, could take potentially 5 years, it was my suggestion that, that the project be split into 2 site plans, one being the, call the south property and the other on the north property. Given what their time schedule is looking like, and that they present it. And it's important to understand, I think, the whole concept of what both sites are. But you have 2 separate parcels, that are, that in terms of calculations and things like that are independent.
Yeah, but I believe he just said that his intention would be to phase it in potentially a different way, such that they have to approve the underground
Right. Yeah.
piece.
You just wind up coming back again.
And leave the Fontenay alone and,
Let me just
again,
clarify a little bit. So, those comments are generated by the client, who, once they get excited about something,
yes.
are moving faster than the design. So, but they make a good point, in that getting the employees settled first
Yes.
sometimes makes sense in terms of the operation of a hotel, which John is pretty familiar with. So I understand a part of the underground, and maybe we carve out just the part that doesn't interfere with the renovation of the Crescent and the demolishing of those buildings, but just the underground portion, which nothing has been built on. So maybe you do 2 site plans, but then carve out a section where the underground separate piece is that could be done off-season and it's just foundation work. But signing an affidavit or signing a promissory note that whatever we're using temporarily for buildings are gonna come down. We're not gonna come to you a year later and say, we kinda like the building. We've built all these buildings, but we're keeping another building. I think that has to be worked out with.
Yeah, well, I think what Werner was saying, though, that there's a timing issue. A site plan is only good for some period of time.
Yeah, and some of this just depends on the timing of permits and things like that, and I think it's we'll get into the more mechanics as far as the time constraints within the ordinance, but I'm just thinking in terms of efficiency for process, that, it would make sense in terms of 2 applications. Certainly, the colony could bring it forward in 1, or they could bring it forward in 3, if they were to, do a partial plan, for the underground, staff housing first.
Yeah.
I think process-wise, there's a multitude of ways to handle that.
And they could always come back to us for an extension if,
That's correct, yeah.
if they're not quite done because they did it in a way that made the most sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had other properties where they had a large plan and then they've come back quite a
Phase 1, Phase 2.
phase 1, phase
three.
2,
Yes.
and now the phase is
Yeah.
actually
Right.
quite
As long
different.
as they started.
And it's got a different septic thing, and it's got a different thing, but the concept was still the same.
What's been helpful here is to see the overall plan and recognize that there's many dependencies. Some things on the plan only make sense when you recognize that there's a symmetry to it, or there's something that's gonna happen later, there's something that's done for staging. It almost lends itself to a iteration A of the site plan. Here it is. There's a lot of detail in the northern section. This is what we want you to focus on, planning board, and this is what we're gonna go do if you approve it, recognizing that we've committed to certain attributes of changes that will come in the southern plan. For example, I can think of an overall parking plan that has to make sense, given the overall number of rooms and uses and all. You don't want to be tied into saying, no, all of the parking spaces for the northern campus have to be on this first site plan.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it will cross the physical boundaries,
That's an important point that you make.
but the
because
logic of it needs to make sense
It's a very
on the
important point
whole.
that you make. We've already gone through those parking. We have
I'm sure
excess,
you have.
we have excess parking for Northern Campus.
Yeah.
But you have to look at this proposal as a whole.
Yes, you do.
And you have to have the commitment of the owner that plan will go through. Otherwise, it's not gonna work in terms of an overall concept. So your point is
And
excellent.
you say commitment of the owner, that's why I'm saying you want a commitment from the board, at least to a certain level, that this is gonna be okay, even though you haven't shown me in great detail what the structures are that won't be built for 4 years from now.
Correct, or, yes, or sometimes what you do is have as much detail as possible in terms of the foundations or the footprints with parking dimensions and so forth, and commit to those things and design within them. You can't extend past those lines. So there are ways of doing that, I believe.
You'll be needing some DEP permits, I think.
Yeah, I would believe so. I mean, for the activities within 75.
Within the 75.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's going to be
Probably
local.
not. I don't know who you use for landscaping, but I know Steve Doe, who was here, has worked with the Kennebunkport Shade Tree Committee, which I'm a member, that's why I can bring this up. And there are trees that we like to see planted. You might consider, since you've got space now and going to be able to plant trees, that within a year or so, the American Chestnut Foundation may have the new blight-resistant chestnut trees. It would be nice to see some of that started in there.
We would certainly be willing to work with those agencies, because if we are involved in the design build, we have an in-house capability of doing the landscape design, but we would be more than willing to review that and get approval for our proposals preliminarily through certain agencies, and review if you'd like.
You don't need approval, but I'm
Yeah,
just
but
saying that we have
wanna
arborists
show
working with
a
us.
fairly
and-
detailed landscape plan.
Can I ask a more detailed question? One of the things that came with the package was this application for site plan review initially filled out.
Yeah.
And you list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. Tax assessors map 8, block 8, block. Can we go through those?
Sure.
Just for a second, because it seems to me that I couldn't quite understand it.
So if you go back to the, probably best
Let me
order.
just ask you about the last one, 881.
okay, I'm gonna count the properties, but I can't tell you I can't reference those numbers right now, but I can tell you how many properties we're dealing with, and I can describe them visually on this survey, but I can't equate the numbers.
This isn't yours. Is that what I'm gathering? You didn't fill this out?
I filled it out, but
Oh.
I'm not, but I can't read because the print's too small. I can't equate them because I can't look at that map and see it, and my copy's very small. All I can say is, there is one property where the colony proper is on the southern campus. There is the Boughton House, which is a separate property on the southern campus, so that makes 2 properties. There is the property across the street, which is the Colony Beach, that makes 3 properties.
That's what I'm not seeing.
So maybe that one's not on your plan, because we're not gonna do anything with it.
That doesn't seem to be there.
We'll
I'm-
make sure
it's
that,
not- I don't know about my plan, but
Well, it
I was
says
just
beach area, right?
asking about your plan.
-1, doesn't that say beach area?
It might.
it says it,
It
yeah.
might,
But to answer your question,
So, okay, maybe the takeaway is, when you do make the application,
those
these are the
numbers,
nits we're gonna pick,
yeah, but
right?
those numbers aren't gonna be there, because now that the properties are purchased,
Oh,
we're going to consolidate the northern campus into one property.
so there'll be
when-
different numbers.
When we come back to you, or before,
Yeah.
the surveyor and Ralph Austin, who's our attorney, is going to he's going to present the property, the deeds. Because of the property's just closed, I can't give you that information. And when we applied,
It's on the other side.
when we applied for the sketch plan review, the property didn't transfer for the Fond May.
Yeah, so it'll be.
So when we come back,
Lot numbers.
this is why it's a sketch plan, we want to show you our development, but when we come back to the application, there's gonna be much more detail to our plans.
Right. And actual copies of the deeds and such.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that was really good, thank you, and I really just, I was glad to hear you say you're gonna phase the project, because it looks quite ambitious, and one thought occurred to me, and I don't know if it makes any sense, but because it's so big, I know you said you had a 5-year plan. I mean, is there any interest in having like a 1-year application for the scope you're gonna do that year? Or is that too limited, like an annual?
Explain that.
Well, you know, you're gonna start this, I guess, this year, and, you know, you come back with an application for the scope of work you're gonna do.
Oh, commit to a scope?
Yeah, that year, and then, or that winter, let's say, this winter coming, and then the next year you come back with another application for the work you're gonna do that winter. I don't know if it would be easier for you to communicate to us.
If we end up doing the project, we will have that.
Okay.
It depends on what John wants, and it'll come really from, John will be directing that train, and he's gonna give us the timeline, or give the builder, the eventual builder, the timeline, and he either will adhere to it or not. You know, that should be committed to within a small variance.
So we'll see multiple applications, basically, for.
Building
work.
applications, you'll see multiples. You won't see multiple planning applications.
Oh, okay, all right,
You want to have the whole site plan
okay,
approved, and then we could designate, or Werner can carve out, okay, once this building schedule's developed, we can carve out, okay, this is what we're going to focus on this year, and they're going to come to us, and these are the time commitments. That's the
Okay.
way I see it, but we're going to have to meet with the town manager, there's road work. We're going to present to the town manager again, because we want to get their blessing in terms of the road first, and then come back to you. So
Okay.
Werner's going to organize that and tell us what he wants.
okay, yep,
But
thank you.
yes, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I think setting goals and parts of it is important.
Okay, great,
Ambitious project.
yeah, very ambitious, yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
It's a privilege to work on it.
yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, I guess,
Motion to adjourn?
Well, did we ever approve
You
the
get a second?
minutes? Did we approve the minutes
I second it.
approve the minutes?
from the previous meeting?
We didn't approve the
Oh,
minutes from the
let's go
previous.
back
Thank
to
you.
that.
So I was wondering, if we jumped sort of past that.
Yes,
I
thank
make a
you.
motion.
So I did have some comments, which is
Yeah, I know,
why
and you fed them to her, right?
yes, and she said she'd be glad to incorporate them if we approved them at the meeting.
Okay,
What'd I do with them?
so, please,
So how do you want to handle that?
well, let's do it.
Okay.
What are your what were your issues? I didn't,
Okay.
you made-
So here's the minutes with my notes. So we're referring to the minutes of the meeting of December 18th.
yep,
And so they're relatively minor. But on item one, the 1911101 5 Greer Road Trust, okay, in the second sentence, approval to expand a portion of the existing house within the existing structure footprint and modify existing stairs. I added those 4 words there.
okay.
Then on, continuing on item 1, on the 6th paragraph, where we talk about the address. The address in the application is valid, which is application of 2444 Broadway, San Francisco, California, 94115 is the correct address, which is updated from what was in the minutes originally. Then in the next paragraph, the last sentence where we talk about the updated impervious surface area is, I added some clarification in there, 3,975 square feet or 44.7% of the lot area, just for clarification. Then 2 paragraphs down from there, concerning the erosion and sedimentation plan, it talks about a general description would be sufficient and propose the use of either an erosion control mix or prefabricated silt fence as needed. That's, again, just clarification. And then the last one is perhaps the most significant one. It's in the paragraph there talking about the house. It says, since the application is, what I'm proposing to update this sentence is to the following. Since the application is proposing to extend the existing single-story house structure into an area currently occupied by attached externally accessed storage rooms, and we talked about the foundation, but I'm just updating that sentence. Okay, so those are my suggested changes.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So,
So I
Make
move
a
to,
motion to
approve
accept
the
as
motion to
amended.
accept
To approve.
as,
okay.
because
as
she
amended.
has that,
She's got this, yeah.
yes.
Okay, as amended.
Okay,
As amended.
second.
Okay.
Okay, in favor? Now, I will.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Good.
Okay.
we're off.
All right, thank you.